Hello, fabulous friends, fans, and superstars. Welcome to Synchronicity Web TV. I am your host, Nadiya Shah, and this is your moment of synchronicity. Well, I am so excited to celebrate with you today, my friend, Tatiana Belashova. Now, Tatiana is someone that I have gotten to know in the astrology community for the last few years, really. And she's taken some classes before at Synchronicity University. And sometimes I would feel like she was like a co-teacher to me because she would bring this depth, this sensitivity, this beauty, this understanding to what was taking place with the different things that were being taught and presented. And so she has this incredible way of expression, but also she has a way of seeing things that maybe not everybody sees or is able to articulate very clearly. And that is one thing I love about her as an astrologer. And so Tatiana is coming to the November 2022 speaker series at Synchronicity University. And for a very limited time, you can choose your tuition rate as low as just $5 a class, an unheard of rate to learn from this caliber of astrologer, as you are about to see. My dear friend, Tatiana is here. Welcome, Tatiana.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nadia. I appreciate it. It's an honor for sure to collaborate. As before, we already once did a small collaboration.
Yeah.
I love your channel, and your school is, as I say, it feels safe there. I think it's a great compliment because it's like a good environment. You can share a lot of things, and people share, and I find it really fun, especially to be present in the class itself, not just watching in the recording.
Thank you for saying that, because I care so much about creating safe spaces. Like,
Yes,
that is so important to me. And I know when I teach a class, as you may remember, I really like to start with a meditation because I feel like that really helps to create that sense of safety for students to really be able to express. And you have expressed, and that's the amazing thing. That is why you're here now, because I've seen what an amazing astrologer you are.
I think also I wanted to add that the meditation, I think, helps to just like tune into the class, not just, have 20 different things in your mind. So it's just good to quiet the mind, so to speak. I love them.
Well, I'm so glad. And so now you are going to be teaching at Synchronicity University. This is really exciting. I mean, people have already seen you on the channel, so they've had a chance to learn from you in that way through videos, but now it'll be in a classroom setting. So let me ask you, planets dancing on the ascendant. Why did you choose that word dancing? What does that mean to you?
Well, of course, I think the first thing, just because for almost 20 years I've been a social dancer. I don't know if people know that, but I mean, what social dancing means, essentially, it's just different partner dances. So for me, that's a natural way to look at everything through the dance lens, as I call it. Also have the website, which is called Dance with Planets. And by that, I mean also that it's better to look at it as a dance. So if we look at it that there are benefics and malefics and complex influences, at some point, especially people who are prone to anxiety or some kind of, I don't know, sadness, maybe something like more like down feelings in a way. So it just can be scary to even learn astrology and look at different charts, because you see patterns, you see things happening.
Tatiana, it's so interesting because as you're talking, I'm noticing that, it's like you are doing a dance as well. And I so relate to that because I have a grand trine in air. I have Mars, Pluto, and Sun grand trine. And so I know, like, when I talk, I really use my hands and I really get into it. And I know people who watch me, like whether on YouTube or in the superstar space, I know they're used to seeing that. They're used to seeing me get into it. And so I'm seeing you get into it, and I absolutely love it.
Yes, actually, like I have Mercury rules my ascendant, and so, but it's conjunct Mars, so that's why I might be very like swift and sometimes talk with passion, I mean, more often. And so people might take it as a kind of more assertive way, but it's just the nature, it's hard to tame it fully. Yeah, so
Why should you? Why should you be your dancing self? I love it. I absolutely love it.
We always think of dance as me and the partner, for example, in partner dances, but in reality, there's also ambience. There's the floor, there's music, and your mood, even your own state, of course, influences what you did before dancing, what you're going to do after. So, and same in the chart. So what we did before is 12th house, where are we coming from? First house is where we are now. It's more the present, right? When the baby is born, it's just the quintessential moment, right? In the family. And what is near the ascendant, and also the rule of the ascendant, and whether it's conjunct any planet as well. All these kind of forms a big picture of how that ascendant might feel to the person and to other people as well. So it's like a multi-layered situation.
And so I know that you are someone who likes to explore the fact that where the planet is in terms of, is it technically in the 12th? Is it technically in the first? How far from the ascendant is, has also a way of speaking to how we dance, how the ascendant dances with that planet as well. Can you quickly talk about the difference? Perhaps just touch on the 12th house versus the first house. Let's say you've got a planet in the 12th versus in the first. How might those be experienced differently?
Yes, that's a really great question and a very big one, right? So first of all, for those who are listening, and if they've never seen their chart, I just want to encourage them to take a look, maybe even stop the video, get your chart and listen further, right? So that you analyze something. And also, if you know your birth time exactly, that's an advantage. You can really define the house of the planet. And the ascendant in different house systems stays the same. It's just the house cast might change the sign. 12th house doesn't mean bad necessarily in my perception. I know it's associated with a complex house, but I think some planets can do well in the 12th, like for example, arts related or something related to the 12th house matters if they're used properly and consciously. So more like bringing to the level when you can have a little bit of control at least over the energy of those planets. That's why we find a lot of celebrities with planets in the 12th, and even politicians, because politicians have enemies, and some of them are hidden enemies, or some kind of people who are involved in a lot of relationships, you know, in the publicity eye. So the first planet, the first house planets, especially if they are close to the ascendant, they would be those who demand attention. It's kind of like the baby is born, you can't just leave the baby unattended. It wants something, right? So, and it would be curious in that respect to know, like, for those who have newly born babies, now birth time is known more exactly. What was the baby like when she or he was born, right? What were the first actions or words, maybe, or something like that. Maybe that can also show that planet in the first house, and especially conjunct the ascendant. Yeah, so there's more to that. It's just like an answer to start with. And so also, of course, it matters if there is one planet on the ascendant or a few, because there are charts like that too. And it can be important also whether those planets have the energy similar to the energy of the ascendant. Let's say someone has I don't know, Taurus rising, and they have like Uranus on the cusp, right? Like now lots of babies will be born with that position, right? Maybe even North Node there. And so that's a totally different situation when we would have, like, for example, Venus rising.
It's fascinating because as you've mentioned, the Taurus rising, anyone right around now born with a Taurus rising is going to have Uranus and the North Node right there near the ascendant in one way or another. And that is going to speak so strongly to how they understand themselves and how they are perceived as well, or at least how they present themselves.
They might also have Saturn on the MC, right? If it squares the ascendant, because we have, I'm born with Saturn Uranus square, you know, I have a Tau square with opposition between Saturn and Sun, and Uranus at the apex. So it's very familiar to me. So it's kind of interesting to see what the generation will be like, because maybe they will be the ones which will transform the world in some way. We never know, right?
Oh my
So,
goodness. Yeah. Isn't that fascinating? And so I thought it would be interesting for us so that the people who are watching can get, a little something that they can start to apply to their own chart right away.
mhm.
Can we like quickly, maybe you just have one or two sentences to quickly talk about each of the planets? Would that be okay? Can we go through the planets now?
Yeah, for sure. Mhm.
So let's start with the moon. Someone who's got the moon near the ascendant, what might that say?
Well, first of all, I would expect such a person to be more emotional than some others, especially if moon is in a sign where it can express emotions, right? Because if moon is in Capricorn, that's a bit different story than if the moon is in Cancer, right? So I would look at what house the moon rules also, and any planet on the ascendant, and that house also might be important in that case. Also, they could be intuitive, could be more prone to mood changes. They might have popularity actually in the at some point of their career, because they kind of are noticed by people. They might be compassionate, so lots of different moon qualities, could be active here. Also, mother and some important women can play a big role in their life. So
And
there's
it's
a lot to
interesting.
say.
Yeah, of course. There's so much we could say. We could be here until tomorrow for sure. I know that I'm sure people have written like volumes just on the placement of the moon. So without a doubt. It's interesting. I just wanted to let people know when we talk about how some planets are better in certain signs than others, that is actually a technique called essential dignities. And it is one of the oldest, like traditional techniques out there to understand how planets operate in different signs. Okay, so let's now go to the sun near the ascendant.
So people with Sun on ascendant, and actually there are lots of celebrities with this position as well, they would kind of appreciate and want people to value them, to love them for their talents, for their potential, as they are. So it would be hard for them, for example, to be born. I mean, they probably wouldn't be born in the family which wouldn't wait for them, as Jupiter on the ascendant. Often people do like having those babies. I mean, at least that's one of the theories, right, which I've heard. But essentially, it's important for those people to work on self-esteem as well if they have a problem in that area. And actually, there's a video about Pluto. Maybe that would be a good video as well. But Sun is you can spot them by their like kind of like, it could be feline look, as they say, more like Leo, but not necessarily. I find that if you look at the person, and actually, just the point of this class and research also was my question about, can we use this technique for doing psychological rectification, understanding what planet is on the ascendant if you don't know the birth time. So those, if you think someone kind of looks Jupiterian and Saturn at the same time, they might have Sun on the ascendant actually, because this is something similar I find in the energy. It's just my observations when I looked at different actors and people. So usually they would be charismatic, of course, and taking leadership as possible and things like that. So father would be important in this case, I would assume. If it's in a 12th house Sun, then it's a different story. Maybe they didn't have actually a father near them when they grew up, or he passed away close to the birth. So different cases are possible. So I look at the birth circumstances as well when um, seeing the charts. So
That's fascinating. Yeah, of course. Yeah, what's happening in the 12th house, and especially the closer it is to the ascendant, again, it is a technique that is widely used by astrologers to look at that, to understand the circumstances around the birth of a person. Absolutely. So, how about Mercury? Mercury near the ascendant.
Mercury, I think, is one of the planets which I call they're kind of comfortable to be in the limelight, a bit more comfortable than some other planets, right? For example, Pluto on the ascendant would not be as comfortable as Mercury, right? Mercury wants to socialize, you know, is associated with babies as well. Maybe a brother or like or some kind of twin even be important in their life, right? So they would probably have, you know, gestures and quite more active, and they would be more like agitated and a born communicator for sure, I would say, depending on the other positions, but Mercury qualities would be important to them. Yeah, so it's just
And
briefly.
yeah, and also Mercury, like mythologically, Mercury was somewhat of an androgynous figure at times. I
Yeah.
mean, he was a lover to Aphrodite and many others and
Mhm.
had many children, but at the same time, yeah, there was something like eternally youthful, but also
Yes,
kind
they
of
would look
timeless.
younger. Mhm.
Yeah, right. I have definitely seen that people with Mercury near the ascendant, they are people who are perceived to look younger than they
Yeah,
are,
yeah,
perhaps for a very long time. Yeah.
that's a great point also, because I keep diving deeper into psychological, forgetting that, you know, there's also like physical and first house's appearance as well. And so those people, maybe you will know them. Actually, that's an interesting point. You know, when even if you learn about some new singer or actor or someone who thinks like, oh my gosh, how I didn't know them before, just actually go and take a look at their natal chart and at the chart of the moment, and you might notice, I've noticed a few times that, for example, someone has Saturn on ascendant or Venus on ascendant, and when I discovered them, there was a similar position in the chart of the moment. That's just an interesting thing. Yeah, so yeah, and Mercury, they also would probably have some finer smaller features than, for example, Saturn or Jupiter rising would be, right? So
Absolutely. And so with Venus, so moving on to Venus, the appearance would be like probably more lush, right? Like the lips would be fuller, the cheeks would be more pink. What do you think about Venus on the ascendant?
yes, Venus on ascendant. I've seen quite a few people with that, and of course, it's easier to spot, I think, than some other planets, if especially if it's just only Venus, because they kind of look attractive, right? And they look might be even sometimes, depending on the sign, more like classical beauty or someone. I know you like the chart of Beyonce, which I love Beyonce as a singer, right? And actually, she doesn't have like a very and Madonna, they don't have very like clear charts, but I think it might be true, the chart which you were showing, because obviously in her, for example, you see that yes, there is for sure Venus, but something else, and she has Venus and Pluto close to the ascendant. I mean, if we take the chart, the birth time, which was in some of the versions. And I think Rihanna has Venus on the ascendant, if I'm not mistaken. Many actors, many singers also have that, because you know you are in the limelight, and often people know you first of all as kind of this diva or an attractive person, and then they can know you deeper, you know, for your lyrics or for something, but often that's just the first impression. And I think with Venus on ascendant, I would expect that the baby is welcomed, that gets some love, you know, from the family, at least in the first year. So
Yeah, it's
if
so
it's in the first,
interesting.
yeah. Oh,
Sorry.
sorry.
So I was going to say, moving to Mars, one of my dear friends, astrologer Robin Armstrong, right? He is a legend in Canada, this very famous Canadian astrologer. Back in the day, he was like on the media all the time. Anyways, I interviewed him like years ago. I went to his place and I interviewed him, and it was such a lovely thing. While I was interviewing him, he kept going like this. Like he kept doing this. And I was like, oh my God, Armstrong, oh, Mars on the ascendant. It was just so right on the nose. So, what do you think of Mars on the ascendant?
Yeah, that's a very interesting position. I think it's also easier to spot than some others if you guess. It's like I call it the desire to move, right? The need to move. So they need to be active. And again, like also back to Venus, is that it does matter whether the Venus and as any other planet is in the 12th or the first. And after looking at a few examples, we're going to take a look at some of them in the class. is that it was quite a clear difference, like at least for me visually, when it's in the first and versus when it's in the 12th. And same with Mars. With Mars, the examples which I found also were, for example, I don't know if you know them, but there are famous choreographers Pina Bausch and Mars Cunningham, because they are known as like very world famous, you know, dancers and choreographers. And as far as I remember, Pina Bausch has in the first house, and Mars Cunningham in the 12th house, and also Agatha Christie has Mars on Ascendant. In the first house, she has AA chart, I believe. Conan Doyle, author Conan Doyle, you know, the detective writer Sherlock Holmes, has Mars close to the Ascendant. So he has actually a ton of planets, I think 6 of some in Placidus in the 12th. So what I would also recommend here to look, if you're looking at your chart, is that is there any what I would also recommend to look at is that is there any close aspect to the Ascendant? Because if it's aspecting the Ascendant, it will aspect the planet as well.
I will tell you, I am a Saturn in the first house type, and I was a very serious kid. What can you say about Saturn close to the Ascendant?
Well, Saturn actually is a very interesting position, I find. I was also curious to see who has it. So one of the singers which I like, because I play music sometimes at dancing as a DJ. So Nina Simone actually has Saturn on the Ascendant. And what is she known for? She is known for, you know, human rights. So Saturn not necessarily is limitations only, or, you know, we are used to think of it as some kind of difficulty. It can be, yes, it's true. Maybe an elderly member of the family passed away when the baby is born, if Saturn is close to the Ascendant. But also, it's usually those people, they might be kind of better at being fair. So they want things to be fair, and they would fight for that to some extent, depending on the position of the chart. Another example, I think, is a different story. Sean Connery has a Saturn close to the Ascendant, and he's agent 007, but he has other, we will check his chart at the workshop, he has other positions which kind of indicate that it's not just Saturnian influence. So they would be serious, responsible, they might have to take care about someone from early age, and maybe limited in something when they were little kids. So also deep thinkers and not afraid of responsibility. So they would be probably like that in the, you know, higher manifestations of the planet. So
Absolutely. So I know we still have the outer planets to do, but I think that you'll be covering that in the class
yes.
as well. And maybe you'll touch on asteroids a couple, because you know people are going to ask you in the chat, they're going to be like, what about Lilith? What about Ceres? What about Chiron? And so if you are so inspired, you can cover all that in the class as well. Tatiana, I'm so proud of you. You just keep shining and doing your thing. Once again, you guys, Tatiana will be a part of the November speaker series at Synchronicity University. And there's just a couple weeks left to choose your tuition rate, as low as just $5 a class, to learn even more about planets dancing on the Ascendant from a dancer herself. One day we got to go dancing. I got to come to Vancouver so that we can go dancing. And, you know, I don't know if you're into the kind of music I'm into, but I'm sure we'll have fun no matter where we go. Well,
yes,
Tatiana,
it's amazing.
I love you. I appreciate you. I send you massive hugs.
Yeah, it's a pleasure always to have you here and in Vancouver.
Yes. And thank you everybody out there for watching. And until we connect again, take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, guys.